How to stop overthinking. So, if you are someone whose mind feels like it's always on a hamster wheel, if maybe it keeps you up at night, maybe you wake up in the middle of the night and your mind is racing, or throughout the day you find your focus here and there, anywhere but the present moment, or you get home from work and you just want to be able to shut it all off and actually just be present with your family or with your friends or whatever you're engaging in, and yet you seem to always be living in your head, this video is for you. So I'm going to talk about why that exists and what we need to do to break that cycle, because it really is a cycle. These are neural pathways that have been established. We can always make change. And so if you're someone who struggled with this, even if you've struggled with it for a long time, even if you think it's related to past trauma, it can always change. My name is Rochelle Walsh, and if you're new to me, I've been a complex trauma therapist for the last 25 years. I now have a coaching program. I help women go from overwhelmed to calm and confident in their emotions through principles of neuroplasticity. I always actually also weave in faith, because faith is so primary to my life, and I believe it's the perfect companion with brain-based strategies to help people overcome a chronic stress response. So overthinking, rumination, scattered thoughts, when we are in that state, we are actually usually in a really high beta brainwave or fight or flight stress response. And our brain in this state is very preoccupied with things that are going on around us, threats that might happen, pulling in from things from the past, things that have happened, trying to figure things out. Many people that I work with complain of having a very busy mind. They just wish they could just shut it off, because what it leads to is, one, that we're not able to focus on what we're doing in the present. So we might get brain fog. We might have problems with memory and focus. Two, we might be ruminating on threats, things that have happened in the past, or things that we're worried about happening in the future, or even imagine things that we're thinking, I wonder if I should have said this differently or said that differently, or creating scenarios in our mind, because basically our mind is in that state of trying to protect us against a real or perceived threat. And the perceived threat part is the problem, because if we're in real threat, we actually need to be in fight or flight and be able to exit the situation or fight off the intruder or whatever it may be. But it's the perceived threat and being in that chronic state of stress that really leads us to many health issues, to feeling fatigued, again, neurological symptoms. It might cause us to be irritable, our emotions to be out of control. It might hold us back from things and just not be able to show up for the person that we really want to be. We may have actions that are incongruent with our core values. So I want to talk about one of the things that's really critical to know when you're thinking about overthinking or a chronic stress response or a mind racing. Even though our minds are very busy and we want to shut them off, what we are pulled to do, what our urge to do, is to understand. We want some new piece of information. So maybe we get a new book, we listen to a podcast, we Google MD it, we talk to a friend, we go over and over the scenario, and our mind is trying to figure it out, right? Trying to figure out whatever problem there is at hand that it's creating or stuck on, or maybe they may seem like completely random things. But what is really important when it comes to slowing our mind and getting to that place of stillness inside is that we work through the body. All the time in my program, I am telling people and reminding them we don't need to go into the story. So many times we make the mistake of thinking there's something that we need to figure out. There's something that we need to understand better. There's something that we need to have more clarity on. Sometimes that's true, but most of the time, what we really need to still our nervous system is to work through a bottom-up strategy. Why this is important because that fight or flight response, even though one of the symptoms is overthinking and a racing mind, that stress response is actually turned on in our lower brain. So that's our autonomic nervous system. So this is the part of the brain that tells you when to digest food, and doesn't really tell you it's going to do it, it just does it. And it doesn't tell you that you need to make your heart beat, it just makes your heart beat. So our autonomic nervous system in our body is where that stress response is first triggered. So that part of our brain, because it's not controlled by our thinking brain, right? So we can't read a book on nutrition and now know how to tell our stomach to digest food differently. Sure, we can read a book on nutrition and make better choices, but when we're talking about knowing something, that doesn't necessarily integrate the information into regulating our nervous system. So that is top brain thinking. Bottom brain is this autonomic nervous system. Lower brain, it's also the part that stores memories, implicit memories about how to process information, or things that we learned early in life, that stores memories about trauma. So this part of our brain processes information a million times faster than our top brain. So when it comes to overthinking, shutting our mind off, what's really important to understand is that there's no new piece of information that you need. It's not out there. Creating stillness in our nervous system comes through working through the body, through the limbic system in a very strategic and specific way. So when we think about repatterning these responses that are in our autopilot or our autonomic nervous system, we need to do exercises that we do daily, and we need to do them consistently for a period of time. They say it takes about 21 days to have a new thought pattern, 63 days to practice and strengthen it, and beyond that to really have that firmly established. So that is the reason that so many times we get great insights, whether it be at a workshop or in a podcast or reading a book or even in a sermon, and yet we don't quite integrate that information. So it kind of goes in and then it goes out, but it really doesn't shift things where we need it to be. So if we want to create stillness from within, which is stillness in the mind, if we want to create stillness within, we really have to start with limbic and lower brain exercises, and we need to do those consistently, because knowing something doesn't change it. Change only comes from having a new way of being. So a real systematized approach. It's going to look a little bit different for everyone. For instance, bottom brain exercises, there might be some kinds of closed eyes, visualizations, or things that are helpful for some people, but yet for someone who's had a traumatic history, they close their eyes and all of a sudden they're dissociating and feeling really uncomfortable. So one of the things that's really helpful is breath work. Breath work is pretty safe for everyone if we do those patterns consistently and we do them for a period of time. I've read research before that over 20 minutes a day of deep breathing done over 15 weeks will change a brain scan. So that's pretty powerful, right? Breath work is pretty powerful. That's an example of a bottom-up strategies. There's many other things that we can do, but the important thing is to know that if you are trying to stop mind racing by, again, reading a book, listening to a podcast, using talk therapy, those kinds of things, you are going to be working way too hard. It's much simpler to work through the body and through the nervous system to get that calmed response, what we call parasympathetic nervous system response. That's rest and digest. So to go from fight or flight, where we're experiencing a lot of symptoms in the body and in the mind, into a state of rest and digest where we're still and quiet in our body. So if there's anything that you would try to start something like this, start with breath work. It's the first thing. It's not the only thing. by all means, but it is something that can make a big difference if done consistently. So I hope that's helpful. If you want more information about how the brain works, I'm going to link a training below where I explain the underlying cause of overwhelm and the important things to understand and how to resolve it. There's also a link in there to book a call with myself or my team if you would like to see if you're someone who qualifies for my 90-day program, Joyful and Present for Women. So I hope this was helpful. Subscribe if you want more information, and I look forward to seeing you in the next video.